Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the first event of our last day of the High Peaks New Year's Reunion Bash. My name is Carolyn Regula, and I will be hosting today's event and those following. All of our sessions are being recorded and will be live streamed on YouTube as well. Even after our master classes and lectures occur on Zoom, you can watch them later on the Close Encounters with Music YouTube channel. The mission of Close Encounters with Music is to engage the imagination of diverse concert audiences in a welcoming setting, to connect listeners to performers and composers, and foster the excitement and sense of community that live performance builds. Also to establish a comfortable listening environment and turning performances into enriching and educational experiences. Today, we have a presentation by psychiatrist and musician Dr. Mark Cannon. He highly encourages you to provide feedback and comments, and to have viewable participants. We have High Peaks alumni cellist Eliza and vocalists Camilla and Santiago, and special thanks to vocal faculty Danielle Talamantes and Carrie Wilkerson for joining us today. And I myself will also be providing feedback as a cellist alum of High Peaks. If any of you watching today would like to provide feedback or ask questions, that's fantastic. Please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom window to submit questions, and I will be relaying them to Dr. Mark Cannon. I don't want to steal any more of his time because I can't wait to hear what he has to say about our situation and to give his insight and very wide viewpoint, musician, psychiatrist. So without further ado, I am going to hand the mic over to Dr. Mark Cannon.
Thank you. I have a tech question. Should I turn down the speaker volume on my device? Because is this providing an additional echo or feedback if the sound from my laptop is coming in there?
No, I think earlier this morning you sounded beautiful, so we're going to keep it as it is.
Okay, so thanks a lot, Carolyn. I want to say this is a pleasure. I'm proud and really honored to be doing this. My wife, Marcia, and I have been longtime audience members and big fans of Close Encounters with Music and Yehuda. And this is the first time I've had the opportunity to do something from this side of the stage. And I was really thrilled that Yehuda asked me if I would be interested to do this. Prior to this, my main distinctions with Close Encounters has been, well, a couple of things. Very often in the audience, I'm the first one who really knows that a piece is over. So I'm the first one to applaud, and very often I'm applauding the loudest. I don't know if Yehuda has ever noticed that there's a quicker loud applause when we're there than when we're not. And also, I think I laugh the loudest at Yehuda's jokes. Not that the jokes aren't good, they're real good, but I think I laugh the loudest at them. What I'm going to be talking about is, well, just this time we've been going through from my standpoint as a psychiatrist and someone who's been working with patients who've been suffering through this as we all have been, and myself as a musician, and well, myself as just a person, things like how the time has been, ways of coping, and also I'm going to be saying some things looking to the future. Spoiler alert, I'm optimistic. And I can't be objective about it. I want to be optimistic as a person and as a musician and for the world of music. And hopefully the things that I say will help us all feel the optimism a little stronger. And as Carolyn said, I'm looking forward to the discussion, the comments, the chat remarks that people might make. I'm going to be leaving most of the time for that. My presentation is going to be relatively short. Now, in advance of this, I had prepared an outline of which this is page 1 of 6, the crib notes. Well, I didn't need it because as I was watching some of the other sessions in this reunion, that wrote my whole presentation. Yesterday morning, Marcia and I were watching the morning session, the international panel. We were watching it in the kitchen, which I guess for a lot of us is the main viewing room. And then my ears perked up at something I heard, and I ran and got a piece of paper and made a scratch note of something I have to include in the presentation. And pretty soon it became like a potato race, a relay race. Back in the day, we called it a potato race, running back and forth and getting the blocks and putting them back and forth. And I kept putting the pen away in the drawer. And after a while, I realized I shouldn't put the pen away because I'm keeping on running and making notes. And really, that wrote my whole presentation. Some of what I'm going to be saying overlaps with things from the other sessions, and that's good because these are things that are on all of our minds. Now, about the piece that I'm playing, I swore Carolyn to secrecy about what I'm going to play because there's a little surprise about it, and now there's a surprise on top of the surprise, and Marcia doesn't exactly know it. Well, one reason I wanted to play this piece is because it exemplifies some of what I'm going to be saying about how music is a thing that can bring us extra joy during this period of time, and a thing where we have perhaps an advantage over most other people. And this piece is a thing of great joy for me. It is Chopin, and sure, it has its pathos and sadness. It's Chopin, but as Chopin goes, it's a very joyful piece. But besides that, I was already working on this piece. It's a new piece for me. Was already working on it at the time that Yehuda asked if I might like to play a short piece. The reason I was extra delighted is there is a thing about this piece that really echoes for me all the times I've been to Close Encounters, and it echoes Yehuda. And when you hear the piece, you'll know why. The piece is in A-B-A form, and I'm talking about the B section. So that if this were like in a live concert, you'd have to be quiet once you realize what the surprise is, because you don't want to spoil it for who didn't get it yet. But now, you could, it doesn't matter. Although if there's someone with you and you don't want to spoil it for them, you could just, go like that or like that to let them know that you know. It's not going to be that hard. The surprise on the surprise is that I can't really play the piece. I played it for my teacher the other day. He thought it was great. Marcia's been saying it's great. She was shocked when I told her last night I'm not going to play the piece, at least not in its entirety. A couple of things. Just the basic thing is, well, this piece is famous for, it's not that well known a piece, but among people who know it, it's famous for its very difficult sixths in the right hand. And so I've been working for weeks now on those sixths. Well, this is something that won't surprise Marcia that much to hear because it has happened before. Last night, when I was giving it a final run through, suddenly my right hand during the sixths, notwithstanding the, I think, literally thousands of times that I've played those passages, suddenly my sixths took on a new fingering. What the? And when that happens, first of all, it probably means you're having a nervous breakdown. But besides that, why was my hand capable of doing that after the thousands of times of practice and habituation that I had put it through? And I realized my original fingering, although it's physically convenient, was unmusical. It put the right hand in conflict with the left hand. So when I was doing it a run through, which was going to be half the real thing, my hand refused to do it. And well, this perhaps is the difference. It's not just a thing of maybe how the pandemic messes up our minds and our playing, but also maybe the difference between an amateur and a professional. once I imagine this isn't something that would be that apt to happen with a pro, although maybe you guys will tell me that it's happened to you too. But you know, once you see the problem with the fingering, you can't tell yourself, okay, forget about it. Tomorrow I'm going to play it the way I've been practicing it all along. It's like either I play the new fingering or nothing. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to leave out the hard parts. I'm going to start just shortly before the B section. And that B section and the surprise within it, the thing about how it is that that echoed for me, Close Encounters and Yehuda, that's really the main reason I wanted to play this piece. So I'm going to start right before that section and then play a shortened version of the recap. This is Chopin's Impromptu in G flat major, Impromptu number 3, Opus 51. And we're starting just before the B section. Then there's the added problem of, can you start something in the middle when you've not been doing that? Is there anybody who doesn't know why this reminded me of Close Encounters concerts and Yehuda? Now, let me just take a little interlude while I move my equipment to where I need it for my talking. Let's see. This goes back over here. Marcia really wants to help me because do I look like someone who needs help? Okay, let me say once again, besides thanks for the opportunity to do this presentation, thank you to Yehuda for the opportunity for me to do some playing before this, this esteemed group. And I want to add also to what I said before about the piece overall not being ready. Marcia's telling me something, I'm too close to the thing. Okay, let's move it back. Well, this is where I'm going to stay anyway. Besides that, it just, yeah, Marcia's giving me a thumb up. Besides that, it just wasn't ready for any kind of thing that I would inflict on any public. I have a consciousness about the standards of this organization, and whether I'm an amateur or not, I felt it had to be somewhere respectful of the standards of High Peaks and of Close Encounters. So that's why I did this abridged version. And maybe in 10 years with extra practice, I'll be ready to play the whole piece. I mentioned that the other sessions that I viewed from this reunion sort of wrote my presentation, and including that I'd like to say some things about the presentation that was given by my colleague, Dr. Cohen, to lead off this reunion. Dr. Cohen talked about his thesis that talent isn't the, pardon if I'm not paraphrasing correctly, I think it's pretty faithful. The talent isn't as preeminent in deciding what kind of musician someone can become as we usually think, that the main thing is practice. Well, nobody would deny the importance of practice, but the main reason I want to be getting into this is it seemed to me that that thesis, that talent isn't so preeminent, is potentially damaging to our self-esteem as high-level musicians. And it's true even for me, even though I'm an amateur, and I'm thinking it's apt to be even more so for professionals. It's one of the things I'd like to hear about from you, whether any of you had that reaction. We pride ourselves on our talent, and we pride ourselves, am I wrong? Pardon if this smacks a little of elitism, but we're special. Everybody's special in their own ways, right? And this is one of the ways that we're special. We have a special musical talent. We have special ability with our ear, our ability to conceptualize music, and perhaps the physicality of doing the performing even, that it's not a thing that just anybody could do and practice for 10,000 or 20,000 hours and become a high-level musician. Dr. Cohen talked about a study that he said showed that you take young age children and follow them along, and you see that when they get to age 20, the only thing that correlated to how good musicians they were was how many hours they had practiced. I just want to mention that I, as a fellow scientist of sorts, want to say that I believe that was scientifically deficient. I say this all in a friendly way. I look forward to seeing Dr. Cohen perhaps in the audience at a Close Encounters concert, and we can hash this out and we can settle it between the two of us once and for all in a friendly way. And just because you disagree doesn't mean you can't be friends. Like if you're doing chamber music and you all disagree about how it should go or what the tempo should be, you're still friends, right? Well, maybe not always, but you know what I mean. About that study that Dr. Cohen said showed that the only thing that correlated with how good or great musicians they were at age 20 was how many hours they practiced. There is what is sometimes called a confounding factor, which is I would tend to assume that the amount of talent somebody had was a big determining factor in how much he or she would practice. Uh, First of all, it's encouraged more to you when you're more talented. You feel the goodness of it more when you're more talented. To put it in like experimental psychology terms, the reinforcement that you experience because of how good it sounds and how good it feels is greater when you're more talented. So I'd say, of course, the people who wound up best at age 20 were the ones who had practiced the most, but it doesn't mean that the amount of practice was the only factor correlated with how good they were. Dr. Cohen, if you're listening here, I hope you don't mind that I referred back to your session, and maybe it'll even prompt people who didn't see your session to go and look at the recording of that. Now, I already said that. So I said that one of the reasons I wanted to make sure to talk about that is because how it might make us feel might be damaging to our self-esteem if we think talent doesn't have that much to do with it. Well, really all of what I'm going to be talking is about how stuff makes us feel. And during these months, it's been harder to feel good. It's been harder to do well. We're deprived of our usual routines, for many people deprived of the usual work, the isolation. And as a psychiatrist, I've been, a lot of what I've been doing is helping my patients through these kinds of factors. And the coping mechanisms are well known by now. I'll just mention in a kind of a thumbnail way these things, but I'm sure you all know about these things. Just first of all, trying to preserve as much as possible of your usual routines, including contact with people, very importantly, contact with people however you can. Phone, Zoom, FaceTime, getting together safely to the extent possible, and also just activity in general, good active activity, positive activity, keeping going to the greatest extent that we can. And keeping going is perhaps the best way to keep going, to keep in our minds that that there's hope, there's life, there's a future, it can be good, and we're going to be doing okay. It's important to keep pursuing as much as possible what we had been pursuing and growing, whether it's our usual work or for a musician's musical practice. And as musicians, I think we have an advantage during this time because music is one of the things that one can do to help himself or herself feel better, even if that's not something that is their life or that they've done before. It's something that can be done in the home, can be done privately, of course, best done with other people. And that's one of the great losses for you all during this period of time. I mean, I know you do things by Zoom and to whatever extent you can in person, but this is a big, big loss. And there's no way around that. There's no way a psychiatrist or anybody can say anything or suggest anything to make that not be the case. I would add this also. Time like this is during a period of deprivation, everything feels more acute. The things that we're missing feel more intense to us than how something might feel during a normal period of time. But also the flip side of that is good things can feel more intense too, because we're more needy, more needful, we have more of a vacuum. So the good things can feel more appreciated and more good. And I believe it can help to highlight that in one's mind and make it be so. Notice it when it happens. It probably is happening for many or most of you automatically because of everything being more intense and there being what I'm calling this vacuum. But making it happen, appreciating the greater appreciation, I believe is something that can help even more. Now, although I've mentioned music and doing music is a thing that can kind of inherently help us through this time. On the other hand, there can be the issue of, because of the emotional forces of what's been going on, do we maybe not have it in us to practice? Do we not feel like music? For me, in the initial months, that's very much what it was like. Besides that, I was very busy with work. I mean, even more busy than ever. I, at the age of 70, have been working harder during this recent period than at any time since medical school. It just, music felt like that just wasn't what was happening. What was happening was the pandemic and being afraid of getting sick and dying and feeling the tragedy of those who were getting sick and dying and of those who had lost their work. And it felt like music was almost irrelevant. And then you add to that what we might call the civic phenomena out there. Our pianist, Mikhail, talked a bit about that yesterday morning. It was a wonderful panel, yesterday morning's panel. I urge anybody who didn't see that to go and check it out. But the George Floyd situation and related things, it felt to me simply like music was not part of the picture right now. And eventually I did get back to it, and the piece that I played a part of this Chopin impromptu, I was looking for pieces that would be joyful, uplifting. I felt some remorse and guilt about not continuing with pieces I'd been working on before and preparing, including like Scriabin's last sonata, 10th sonata. That's going to be a hard piece to get back. If I give it up for now, I'm going to be wasting all of that work from before. Well, not really, but it feels to me like we shouldn't worry too much about that. To the extent we can, keep on working on what we've been working on, but let our bodies and minds inform us. It is a new and different world right now, and to some unknown extent, it's going to be a different kind of world in the future. This pandemic is part of us and will be part of us, the memory of it, the experience of having gone through it, and it may change some of our preferences for music, what kind of music we need. When you're a performing musician, I guess especially when you do a lot of chamber music or when you play in an orchestra, you don't necessarily have the choice of what repertoire to do. But to the extent that you do, I would suggest it's good to let ourselves be open to how these new forces and the new future is going to be affecting our inner selves and what we gravitate toward. Now, what is the future world going to be? In my own profession, in psychiatry and in mental health treatment in general, that's a pretty easy one. We don't know the extent of it, but quite virtually, certainly, virtual treatment is going to be more and more part of it. I've been amazed at how much I've been able to continue my work fairly normally without seeing people in person. I had never done FaceTime or Zoom or anything before, and it feels almost like real contact to me by now. And it's virtually certain that this kind of virtual remote treatment will be more and more part of the field going forward for multiple reasons. It's more convenient for a lot of people. Some patients, prospective patients, who might not have been that eager to go. I mean, there's very often resistance to coming for mental health treatment, but the fact of having to make the additional time to go to the office and come back, well, now you can do it from home. So that's going to be a thing of mental health treatment. It's much harder to predict how is it going to affect the world of music, but I'm going to try a little bit with an eye toward optimism and hopefulness. I would like these things that I'm going to say to be true. Who knows? You can't predict the future. Even like how a pandemic would have been, nobody would have known that a couple of the big things during a pandemic would be getting toilet paper and that everybody would be baking in their kitchens. But, you know, that's how it is. And this is going to be perhaps even harder to predict. The way I see much of it is that this pandemic will accelerate changes that were in process in any event, as well as creating different factors. And I think it's quite possible that more and more in the world of music and in music performance will be through online. and we're getting uh, unavoidable preparation for that right now because just about all of it is remote. So we're going to be in the swing of that. And I believe that anticipating what that will amount to, what the nature of that will be, will help certain organizations do better than they otherwise might. Um, I have no doubt that Yehuda is thinking about things like this, trying to anticipate the future directions of music and performing and what kind of work will be allowed and enabled. That's been a forever thing for music, but perhaps, and especially for people who run organizations that put on concerts. And now it's more of a challenge than ever because the future is going to be more different than it has been in a long time. Part of the reason for my optimism comes from how I've become aware that many new people have gotten into doing music and classical music because of things that are available online, like self-taught, like instructional things on YouTube. I've been active over the years on a music discussion forum, an online website called Piano World, and it's mainly people who have been playing piano fairly seriously, but we also get a lot of people who come on and say, hi, I've never had a lesson in my life, but I've been learning from this YouTube video and I want to play this and tell me what you think of it. Many people like that. Some of them are surprisingly good. Most of them aren't as good as they think they are, but that's okay. And and it's great that they're doing it. And for what I'm talking about, what it tells me is there is a potential much larger audience for classical music and for concerts from people who've gotten into it that way. And I've also, besides experiencing myself a hunger for live music, I've seen how many people are having that, including people who aren't particularly musicians. I'm also active on a sports discussion website about baseball. It's not about music at all. And what I've seen on there is a hunger for concerts, people champing at the bit for there to be live classical concerts for them to go to. And much is talked about in general about pent up demand for things once the world becomes closer to normal or completely normal. I would like to believe that classical music and classical music concerts, including live concerts, are going to benefit from that, and we want to be ready for that. I talked about how perhaps more and more of the performing life is going to be by video. Much more concerts than in the past are going to be by like online. I believe that I would like to believe and do believe there is going to be this hunger for live concerts. Yehuda referred to this in yesterday's morning panel, and he used a great phrase that I wrote down. One of the things I ran in the kitchen to scribble to make sure I wouldn't forget it. The need for communal sharing, the desire for it, the natural desire for it. Yehuda talked about how it's not the same when you're seeing something by yourself at home as when you're in an audience of 1,000 people and sharing the experience. Yes, indeed. I want to add also, without getting into politics, which it's been hard not to get into in these recent years, that I'm also optimistic that in the United States, there will be in the coming years greater government support and funding for the arts. I certainly hope there will be. I look forward to it. I bet that there will be. Just some musing about other things that might become part of the future world of musical performing and the business of music. Besides that, more of it might be virtual and online. Is it going to be more interactive and participatory in some way with the audiences? I don't know. I would think if it's possible for there to be, that could be something that would help with success. Will it become less formal? Will there be completely different, unimagined formats to public concerts, different structures? I don't know, but I'm sure that these are things that many of you have been thinking about, and it's part of what maybe we can have during the discussion. Well, with that, once again, thank you for letting me do this. I hope I haven't gone on too much longer than I planned. Well, a little longer, but we've got 20 minutes left. So thank you, Yehuda. Thank you, Carolyn. And let me hand it to you for the moment.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Cannon. I wanted to see if there was any feedback, anyone in our panel of alum. Anyone want to offer some insight for Dr. Cannon? Any questions? I think we're figuring out his mic situation, but Danielle and Carrie?
Yeah, something he said about those initial days, weeks, months where, music was not a focus. We were all just completely obsessed with what was unfolding. And I recall distinctly what it felt like in the immediate days after 9/11. When was it going to be okay again to laugh and to enjoy life, after something so tragic? So certainly for the two of us, it took quite some time before we felt motivation to practice and any kind of inspiration to plan projects. But I think, once we did, after those first couple of months, it's been nonstop innovation, trying to be creative and to absolutely, like Dr. Cannon said earlier, to keep on keeping on. You rest, you rest. So that hit home.
Liza, Camilla, or Santiago, do either of you? Yes, Camilla.
I have a question. I think it's a question. We'll see what comes out for Dr. Cannon. From a psychiatrist perspective, I'm certain that there has been a huge resurgence of anxieties, especially performance anxiety in musicians who were left jaded by perhaps their most recent live performance or whichever their last live performance was before we kind of shut down. I know personally, I still remember everything I did wrong the last time I performed for an audience, and not having the opportunity to go out and perform since then has sent me back into my shell as a performer a bit. I was wondering if you had anything to say about that.
Should I take it?
Yes, please, Mark.
Yes, and after addressing this, I'd like to say something else briefly that Marcia told me I didn't say. I didn't think I had to, but she's right that I should. Thank you for mentioning that, and I would just say everything that can be bad within ourselves has been made worse during this time. And performance anxiety, I'd say, for multiple reasons, which I'll say in a moment, but let me just digress for a second and say the Close Encounters events that I've heard didn't evince the slightest bit of any kind of compromise because of this being a pandemic. But about performance anxiety, we are worse inside. We are more tense. We are more distracted. We have less physical activity, most of us, and decreased physical activity in itself for most people increases tension and anxiety. We have much more self-questioning and questioning about the world. All of this adds to insecurity. So yes, I would just I would bow down in an extreme way to any musician who has been able to not experience something like what you have said during this period of time. The thing I wanted to add that Marcia pointed out I didn't say is what it was about that piece that I played that made me, that echoed for me inevitably Close Encounters and Yehuda. Can I just ask, is there anybody does anybody want to say what they think it was or what they know it was, or anybody just feel that it wasn't as obvious as I think?
I'm not sure, Dr. Cannon. I think we're just all really wrapped in what you have to say. And I think we're also very excited every time we hear live performance. It is a rarity nowadays. So, please
Let me,
cat
oh,
out of the
okay.
bag.
Is Yehuda with us and able to speak?
He's not able to speak.
Okay, I'll just say, I don't have to make it a quiz. That's a cello in the middle section. Chopin's second favorite instrument, it is said, and we know, was the cello. And there are several of his pieces where you could tell he's doing his best to play the cello. And that's one of them. Another thing that comes through his pieces is like there were a few times that he was this Polish composer who settled in Paris, was doing his best to be Italian. But more commonly, we hear him trying to be a cellist. So that was that.
Wonderful. He actually did write a comment that I'll read. It was either him or Hannah said, "Mark, love your sofa, love your artwork, and love you. Thanks for the healing, upbeat presentation." Oh, it was Yehuda. "And keep practicing those sixths, Yehuda."
I sure will. With the new fingering that doesn't conflict with the left hand.
Yes. So we heard from two of our guest volunteer panelists. I want to quickly ask Liza or Santiago if any of them have any questions, any feedback from Cannon? Yes, Liza.
Hi, thank you so much. I think there are a lot of group. I was making notes on my iPad, so I was looking down, but I really appreciate that Dr. Cannon, the share about his vulnerability at the beginning. Say, "Oh, I haven't practiced, or I practiced, but yesterday." So I like the part that the teacher or a doctor being vulnerable to the patient or the students. So I really appreciate that. And thank you so much for bringing the hopeness and optimistic to this conversation too. Because, yeah, there are a lot of challenges, but there are also some possibilities. Like we can teach the students like across the nation. But there is a part it's difficult. It's like too hard to hear the quality of the sound. So when the Dr. Cannon is playing, we can hear the beautiful melody, but the dynamics we cannot really hear it from the virtual setting. Or maybe you're playing legato, but the computer doesn't catch legato part.
Yeah.
So it's not sometimes it's not that legato. But I would say, yeah, there was a beautiful music, and I appreciate that you share your really personal thoughts with us. Thank you. And I really appreciate the High Peaks event, because it's hard to get together to play music, but because of this event, everyone can get together and discuss, and yeah, I really like it. Thank you.
Beautiful. Santiago, would you like to add any remarks or ask any questions?
I don't no, I think everything that I was kind of thinking has been mentioned. Definitely do appreciate Dr. Cannon coming here, giving us a beautiful piano presentation, and letting I think I echo definitely what Danielle and Carrie said about those first couple months being a little bit difficult. When Dr. Cannon referenced the difference between practice and talent, that was something that kind of that was comforting in a way. I'm not sure if I like 100% like want to say that, like want to like push that conversation, because like I don't know that like it's super productive right now. But like I do take comfort in some of in some of what was said in terms of the of recognizing that you do have an ability, especially during these times when it's a little bit difficult to motivate yourself to get up in the morning and practice. Um, you know, there's something to be said for the time that you put in prior to this whole disaster, um, in terms of having built these skills. And even if I mean, I didn't practice for like a good month when this whole thing started, and then like when I started picking it back up again, it was I wasn't doing it with this mentality of trying to, like become like it was hard to see when this would end. Like Danielle and Carrie said, it was hard to have an attainable goal to kind of look forward to, which perhaps for a lot of us was something that motivated us to practice. There's this concert coming up, and there's this whatnot. That was gone for a little bit. It seems to be coming back now. So I guess to Dr. Cannon's point, that recognizing that you have this ability is comforting when you do start to practice again, because you're like, okay, yeah, like I've taken a few steps back. Maybe like some of these pieces that I was working on, I put on the back shelf, but like just like doing like starting off like quite much more simply is something that has helped me kind of like address some of that. And by that I mean like instead of maybe like trying to tackle like an entire, I don't know, like a very difficult piece all at once that I was working on before that I haven't practiced, I'll just start off with like smaller chunks. I'll do something like, okay, like today maybe I don't have it in me to like practice the entire the trumpet shall sound from Handel. Like I don't have it in me to do all that, but I can do a warm up for 20 minutes, and like just the act of like hearing yourself sing and like hearing yourself be like, oh, like it's pretty good. Like I did this, I attained this, and it sounded good because I have talent. There was something to be said for that. So I appreciated kind of grappling with that a little bit.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing, Santiago. And I can't say enough again, all of our panelists today, putting yourself out there and sharing a personal story, like what Liza said, it can be very vulnerable, and that does take a lot of courage. So bravi to you all. Dr. Cannon, is there anything you want to give feedback on from what you heard from our four panelists?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to comment on what Santiago just said, just to commend his comments, personal comments, but which have, I think, a great widespread use. And in fact, the principles behind what he said are like a little thumbnail of the entire field that is now called cognitive behavioral therapy. It used to be called just behavior therapy or behavior modification. The principles of just taking, perhaps putting things down into the pieces that the bits that one can handle to help one be better and feel better and progress toward the whole thing. That's really the entire field right there. And it was so interesting to me just thinking that this thing that it's an academic field and it's like textbooks can be written about it. It was all there in the couple of minutes where Santiago was expressing what he has done.
Bravi, Santiago. Wonderful. Also, I don't want to forget, we do have a question from the watching audience, so I want to make sure they're recognized. We got the question, can you envision the future of classical music concerts as a hybrid of live and virtual? If so, how may this change or enhance the viewer or musician experience? So your thoughts on if concerts are live and virtual hybrids, what do you think that might change for the audience or performing player? And that's for, I'll open that for you, Dr. Cannon, to give your input.
I was purposely staying silent because I think the others are more likely to have good ideas about that. So I'd like to punt on that.
I'm not sure if anybody in this panel attended, I'm sure many of you were at Crystal Monic's presentation on music practices in the digital realm. And she is an opera director who works in the area a lot. And she said that she thinks this is using this digital format is something that has been successful, at least in our field, in the opera world, and that it's something that we think is going to stick around. I know certainly I have watched countless numbers of streams from the Met or galas that my friends have put on or professors that I used to work with. And it's just refreshing because it allows us to connect with these musicians who we haven't worked with in a very long time, who may be living in far off parts of the world. And it just allows us to communicate in a way that we I'm sure we would have thought of it eventually if this pandemic had never happened, but it's just, it allows us another option, for those of us who are in a part of the world where it's not as accessible for us to attend an opera in person. So I think basically just accessibility, bringing music to communities where it might be a trek to see a live performance.
Thank you, Camilla. I do want to encourage Danielle and Carrie. Thank you for joining us. I know they have a teaching schedule, so they might have to leave soon, but I saw they unmuted. They read my mind.
Yeah, I think we're already there. I think, it's been a steep learning curve, but after the initial blow, the initial shock of losing performance careers and wanting to get ourselves back on track, just speaking for the two of us and taking on projects like the project Carolyn and I are going to be releasing soon. It's a different kind of collaboration, but it's still collaborating. And I think so many universities, colleges, churches, performing arts centers, they've invested so much money into their audiovisual departments now that I think we're there. Using my own university, George Mason, as an example, Danielle and I just did a recital there in February of 2020 before everything was shut down. And we had to hire a student videographer because we couldn't find anybody on faculty or staff that would, from the College of Visual Performing Arts, that had the time to do it. Well, now they've installed all the audiovisual technological requirements to do recitals in our recital hall. So they're all being broadcast now live. That's not going to stop. So I do think we're going to see a hybrid model, probably short term. I think for sure there will be a hybrid model, but I think audiences are going to demand it. So I really do think we're there, and I don't think that's going to go away.
And to comment on the question that you read, Carolyn, it's a completely different feeling to perform to an empty hall. You don't have the energy of the audience, good or bad. Mm-hmm. And then, like Dr. Cannon mentioned earlier, this sense of communal experience as one, letting the symphony wash over you, and just that energy cannot be replaced. But, we're so grateful for what we have now. And yeah, I think, us doing our studio recitals, and grandma and grandpa in North Dakota can tune in when they would never have seen little Susie sing. That's definitely a plus.
So we're going to have to go here shortly, but Dr. Cannon, I did want to say thank you so much for all of your insights. It's been a joy to be a part of this presentation with you. And we share your optimism.
Absolutely. I so appreciated Camilla's question, and whether you're an amateur or a pro, Anxiety is it's a thing, and like you mentioned, Dr. Cannon, everything seems to be heightened, the good and the bad, and to accept that that's okay and it's normal.
I want to say thank you and thank everybody. I was just pleased that I was asked to do this, that there was interest in the subject, and I was looking forward especially to hearing comments from you all, and glad that you all participated so much. I wish that there were an opportunity for me to hear much more from everybody here, because these are just ideas I have, and who knows. And I think we all benefit from hearing what everybody else thinks about anything with regard to these things.
Fabulous. Thank you, Danielle and Carrie, for joining us and for those ending remarks, especially from a faculty perspective. We have alumni perspective. So thank you for that variety and for your contribution, Bravi. I actually have a question myself for Dr. Cannon that I would like to quickly indulge and just share a little bit. I found when the pandemic first started, I found that I felt very unusual because I didn't stop practicing actually when the pandemic started. But I will say it was a weird energy I had. I almost felt like I was practicing out of desperation, and it was a little frantic. And I definitely feel, my mind, I had to process what was happening around me. I had to process what's the new normal gonna be for now. And as I processed that and I kind of came to terms with reality, my practicing definitely got much more productive and normalized, and I was at that calm state again. So I had this really weird spike of energy that wasn't necessarily productive. And I think I found myself kind of compensating for the lack of performing. I was trying to compensate in my own world and being stuck in this apartment. I don't know if my colleagues have felt the same. I kind of wish I took a break. I feel like that might have been just to kind of have a mental health break. But my question for you, Dr. Cannon, is I've been doing a lot of video productions during this time, as Carrie mentioned, but it's not going to be the same when I finally get to go back on that stage and I finally get to play for an audience. And I feel I haven't exercised that part of my brain in almost a year. I haven't gone on a stage, a live stage. And part of me feels apprehensive about, well, how can I prepare for that? How can I prepare for the time where I can go on the stage? What can I do now? So I'm curious from a psychological angle, and about the world of practicing and musicianship. How do you think we could prepare? What could we do now that things are slowly starting to open up? What do you think we could do to prepare for that moment when we do get to be live?
Well, first of all, I want to say that it sounds like you were able pretty well to find within yourself good natural coping mechanisms. The deficits and deficiencies that you described you went through, it would be hard for anybody not to have experienced some such during this time. One would have had to be oblivious or insensitive. And, we musicians tend to be, here I go again about how we might be different in a basic way from other people. But sorry, that's part of my pride, even as an amateur. I think we're more sensitive than average, as a group. So sure, we're going to be having reactions like that, including negative ones. It sounds like you really found you found ways to cope very well, but not to bring yourself up to 100% functionality. And what to do about that? Well, all the kinds of things one can think of, and I talked a bit about some general considerations about that, to help oneself feel better and be as close to sort of normal during this period of time. And it helps also, I think, if someone isn't just a solo performer, but is doing chamber music or part of an orchestra, choir, chorus, because then you can all support one another. You can talk with one another about it and share the kinds of things you just said and just feel comfort in the company, get suggestions, pointers, ideas from the others, and just feel the goodness of the togetherness such as there can be when you're associated with other musicians.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Cannon, for addressing. That's really helped. And I definitely know I felt better once I normally started Zooming with other friends of mine who are musicians and kind of feeling like, oh, I'm not alone. I'm not weird for feeling what I'm feeling. I see Liza nodding her head. Do you want to kind of, if you don't mind, anything I said triggered anything you might want to share, if you don't mind?
Yeah, I won't mind. I agree with what you said, and then the comment from the Dr. Ken, because yeah. So at the beginning, everyone is kind of locked down and then very shocked. But then after all, actually there are two ways. I actually see two ways. The people who is more outgoing, they feel like this lockdown make them really sad. But if the people who is more introverted, they might feel like this situation is good for them. So yeah, so echo what you said. I really agree that at the beginning and then feel a little bit frantic, and then later on, then you reach out to friends, and then you realize, oh, you're not alone, because everyone is just like you. So I really appreciate that you say that. I do, because of the conversation, I do have one question. So, Dr. Kanan, do you have any suggestions to the people who is like stressful and then in your circle? Because people deal with the emotion differently, and like the people here in this meeting, maybe we are be aware of where we are, so that we reach out to people. We reach out, but some people may be not that optimistic, or they are still not in the stage where we are now. So is there any way you can help? The reason I'm asking is I saw students acting that way. They are like got burned out of the Zoom thing.
This subject makes me almost too depressed myself to even begin answering. It's terrible. Much of what is going on just does not have a good solution. The ideal solution would be for everybody to get the kind of help and assistance that they could use. And I don't just mean professional help. That's part of what I'm talking about. So access to healthcare is part of the issue here. And also, even people who might have access might not reach out because of the stigma of mental health care, or just of being depressed, having anxiety. But not just professional help, but some people are alone, and the people who are alone have had perhaps the hardest time during this period. And people who are not alone, just even like within households with couples and families, it's famously there have been unusual stresses during this period of time. To some extent, it has brought people closer together in some instances, but even then, bringing them closer together, sometimes coexisting with that, has been unusual stress. People who are alone don't have the ability to get, besides not having the companionship, they don't have the possibility for the kinds of support, the kinds of active support, suggestions, thoughts, role modeling, examples of things that can be done to help oneself. So my main answer is the subject almost makes me too depressed to start answering. It has just been difficult and bad. People have suffered, are suffering, and worse than suffering. And those of us who've been able to cope fairly well and keep going and have some optimism for the future, we're doing among what's the best that people can be doing.
Great. Thank you, Liza, for sharing that and for your feedback, Dr. Cannon. Camilla or Santiago, do either of you want to give input about? I'm just going with the last thing Dr. Cannon said, which was kind of about feeling like you're not alone or communicating with the people around you. Did you notice anything during this time about that?
Yeah, so during these crazy times, I actually what Liza said a little bit resonated with me in like a weird way because I consider myself like a more introverted person. But when but like performing is usually like what I'm like when I like go crazy. And like people like if you like see me perform, you wouldn't think that I'm like a very introverted person. So like that's actually something that I've been like craving. Um, at the same time, like oddly enough, I mean, I'm lucky enough that I live with my family, but during these times, maybe because I haven't experienced it, something that I've like really been craving is that time to be isolated. It's is that time to be because there's so many people in my house that usually I don't have like that much time for like self-reflection and like self-space. And I actually like oddly enough, I had a lot more of that when I wasn't like at home as much, when I was like going out and doing projects and doing that sort of thing. So for me, it's actually like the other end of the thing. For me, I guess what I try to do in my own practice, and I guess for anyone who like may be listening that maybe is in a similar situation where like now like the space they have for themselves is a little bit less is to go out and take that time for yourself. So for example, I have my dog. I'll like go take my dog out on long walks, and that gives me that headspace that I need to really process some of the emotions, those heightened emotions that Dr. Cannon talked about a little bit by myself a little bit, because I feel like sometimes, especially during these times, we can get a little bit more impatient with each other. And if you're living in a group setting, as I am, it's important for those of us who are like me, who like need that reflective time to find it. And usually, maybe like going outside is usually a good way to do that. Yeah, if nothing else, I've found that going outside and getting some good air in there is good. Anyway, yeah, have a hard time cadencing my thoughts, but I'm done now. Yes.
For me, I also consider myself an introvert, but I live in a house with, there are 7 of us in total, and we're all musicians. And it was definitely overwhelming at first being trapped in a space like that where there's constant noise going on. So what I actually started doing was, I mean, I've always considered myself a performer first, but I started doing more research, reading more scholarly journals, and I read a couple books on Latin American art song, and I read a book on Chopin's harmony just for fun. I was studying Schenkerian analysis, just things that are strengthening my musicianship and are perhaps opening up doors for me in the future. I'm not sure yet, but it's interesting. I wasn't much involved in research and academia before the pandemic. And I guess just the desperation to have something to do has opened this door to me that I hadn't considered before. I mean, prior to the pandemic, I thought I wanted to apply to young artist programs after school and maybe get a performance certificate. But now I'm thinking of perhaps doing a Fulbright or doing more research post grad, which is came to a shock to me. But I'm curious if anybody else has had that experience as well. Just doing more research since the pandemic started.
Yes, I can. I've done a little bit more research as well. I've found that has been the case. Some of it has been yeah classwork related, but there has been like much more time to do readings on things on academic things that we're interested in versus things that are like prescribed to us because I guess like maybe like the time management was rough at first, trying to like deal with technology and whatnot. But like right now it's I mean like there's still more downtime inevitably. So yeah, I would agree with that. More research, yeah.
And I was talking to Carolyn a bit about this before the panel started, but both of us decided to take the same approach to this semester, take less classes for now, and that has allowed me to focus more on these interests that I've developed since then, less time dedicated to the classes going towards my degree. Simultaneously, I am strengthening my skills and, just I'm a lifelong learner, just continuing to intake information and sharpen my brain, I guess, while taking a break from school, I guess. It's been interesting for me.
Wow, thank you guys so much for sharing that. I identified hardcore with a lot of things you were saying. I really related to it. Dr. Cannon, do you have any feedback or insight about Santiago mentioned the value of going outside and kind of adapting to find your own what is now me time, adapting to find a new version of that. And Camilla mentioned exploring new interests and discovering things that she might not have. Did you see anything similar in working with your other patients, or do you have anything, any feedback about those, the things they shared?
Yes, to all of the above. I think you all just said it, and you just summarized it. Yeah, it depends on the person, and in working with my patients, with some people, I have just tried to think of what new kinds of things can I suggest to them based on knowing them that might be things that they really can do, that has a good chance to actually happen and that would help them. Sometimes it's building on things that they already do. Sometimes it's knowing things that they used to do or did a little bit of and seemed to be very meaningful to them. But yes to all of the above. Just going outside, finding one space, finding a way to let yourself have ideas, thoughts, feelings, goodness come into yourself, and any other tangents that one might go off on in thinking along such lines. So yes to all of the above. These things can be very important. And in short, I would say anything but just doing nothing and losing hope. Anything that represents positive activity, thought, active activity, stimulation of the mind, and leading ourselves in good directions.
Fabulous. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Cannon. I think that what you say, and I could be mistaken, but boiling it down to positive activity, whatever it is, just finding something to do and trying to find a new routine for yourself seems to be a reoccurring theme here. I don't see any more audience questions. So I think it might be nice to see if anyone has any final comments from the panel for Dr. Cannon, any last contributions you might want to make, and also Dr. Cannon, if you have any closing thoughts for us today. So I'll open it up to my three colleagues. If you have any other final things you'd like to say, other than thank you. Oh my goodness, thank you for the time you've taken, Dr. Cannon, to share with, I feel like we're kind of in a little group therapy powwow right now, and it's really nice for me. It's been very encouraging and comforting. So to my colleagues, do you have any closing thoughts?
Well, I just want to say most of my preparation time was practicing those sixths.
Yeah, so I would say like practices make you perfect, make you better doesn't necessary to make you perfect. Sometimes I would tell myself that. Yeah. So, well, I would like to, yeah, also thank you. And then there is another thing I would like to mention and then comment is like during this time, I feel like everyone should have more kindness and to each other, be more patient with each other too. That's what I see in everyone here in some of the comments. I really appreciate that. And there's other thing maybe you can briefly talk about. Do you see any differences between as a psychologist with a music background and then without music background? Do you see the differences between those? Besides, you can play or not, but is there music that what's the benefit of the music bring in you or bring to your patients?
You know, I've never thought about that before, but I'm going to start answering with an example that leaps to mind that I'm afraid it's going to sound like egotism or narcissism because I'm going to be referring to a review that I once got. And the idea here is that in a way it's the same thing. For me, it's it's in some ways the same activity, doing music, understanding music, and doing the kind of treatment that I do. The one time in my life I got a review of a concert. It was years ago in the New York Times, and the reviewer happened to get up on the right side of the bed that day and gave me a pretty nice review, considering you could tell from the review that I wasn't a wunderkind and I'm not going to be Vladimir Horowitz anytime soon. But what he praised my playing for, and here's three words, and what I loved about it is it applied equally to my actual work. And in fact, one would think, if one was to say, what is it about Mark that the person's talking about, it would be psychiatry, not music. Commitment, understanding, and sensitivity in the music. And it was one of the most wonderful blasts I've ever gotten. So, you know, to whatever extent music helps one with a sense of commitment, understanding, and sensitivity, absolutely. But, you know, as I said, I never thought about this question before. And I'm not sure I could say that being a musician automatically makes one this way, but it helps.
Fantastic. Dr. Cannon, I do want to say we had an audience member give a comment I wanted to quickly address. I was not aware there was a question here, but I will read to you what someone wrote. I know we're in the closing moments, but hopefully you can briefly address this. It was about the talk with Dr. Cohen. He mentioned the book Outlier was a book he had referenced. And this viewer had been reading the book, and they said the 10,000 hours separated good from best, assuming the person had a threshold of ability to begin with. So I'm not sure if you have some feedback on that you would like to provide for us.
Yes. It's not a binary thing like having enough ability to begin with or not having enough ability to begin with. I feel like saying, don't get me started. It's like many things, in my opinion, are wrongly reduced to such a binary thing. Like threshold, this isn't the threshold phenomenon. I probably would exceed that threshold of ability, but I have no, it doesn't harm my self-esteem to say I don't have the talent or ability that most or all of you guys have. I'm totally comfortable with that. I think I have more than average talent and ability and flair for this kind of thing, but there's all kinds of levels. If I had that extra higher level, even though I'm over the threshold, I would have practiced more hours. I don't know how many thousands of hours I have, but if I were as talented, as gifted as various piano colleagues of mine that I could mention, I would have practiced many times over as much as I've had. So to me, the fact that the study did recognize that kind of a threshold before looking at whether practice hours were the only factor correlated with how good someone would get, that doesn't begin to address it at all. And I would have to say that again, I look forward to talking about this with Dr. Cohen with a smile, but to me, it is woefully deficient from a scientific standpoint to have reasoned it out that way. And
Thank you.
I punctuate it with a smile and a laugh, so at least what I said ends on a positive note rather than a critical one. But also let me say that my main reason for wanting to reference that in this session is because I found it mildly damaging to my self-esteem to be embracing the thesis that Dr. Cohen was presenting. And to whatever extent other people may have been affected that way, I wanted to help ameliorate that.
I see, offering kind of the other side of reactions that might have taken place. Okay.
Yes, that we are talented and unusually talented, and we can be proud of that.
Camilla and Santiago, do any of you have any closing thoughts, feedback, or last minute questions for Dr. Cannon?
I just wanted to say thank you. I think I've expressed everything, but what a stimulating conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time to come and speak with us today.
It's been a great pleasure and honor, and I appreciate particularly how interested you all have been and how much you have contributed to this.
Yes, thank you as
The wonders of Zoom.
well.
We're just gonna wait for Santiago's signal to catch up, and then I might ask him to repeat what he's saying because I want to make sure he's heard. So I'm gonna give him a little bit of time. Santiago, are you back with us? Have you?
Hello?
Yes, fantastic. I want to make sure you were acknowledged in the ending there. Please repeat what you said. I don't think we got all of it.
Sure, yeah, I'll make it brief in case my computer explodes or something. So yes, thank you, Dr. Cannon. I was just saying that both my parents are actually psychiatrists and a psychologist. So I, as a musician, you're kind of like the intersection of that. So I really appreciate your presence here. And yeah, I hope our paths cross again. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Santiago. Dr. Cannon, any final words for us before we close out today?
Just thank you for this opportunity, and I'm so pleased that there has been such interest and participation. As much as I like hearing my own voice, I'm even more interested to hear what other people think. And this has been so interesting and enjoyable for me that way.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cannon. And again, for our panelists for being here today and having the courage to share some personal comments and stories. Thank you all so much for watching today. I encourage you, we have more events on our final day here for the High Peaks reunion. So I'm going to put a link in the chat. You can still go and register free and open to the public. And I'll quickly run down. Everything is in Eastern Standard Time, 4 p.m. We have a master class with violinist Peter Zazovsky. 8 p.m., Danielle and Carrie, who you saw this morning, they are giving a vocal masterclass with similar theme, the theme of Epiphany, and sharing songs, pieces relating to Epiphany, or personal experiences some of our vocal alumni might have had during this past year. And 9 p.m. on the Close Encounters with Music YouTube channel, we have a faculty tribute. So a compilation of faculty performances, recent, some of them happening this past year, and they're all going to be streamed on our YouTube channel. And thank you again, Dr. Cannon, and to our guests. And we hope to see you soon for another event. And thank you all, and have a good day.
Thank you, Carol, and thank you, Doctor.
Thank you all. Thank you.